Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today's video, I'm going to teach you exactly what a food plot program is. A lot of people plant food plots, right? And they say they're, feeding the deer and doing this and doing that. But what is actually a program? If you're trying to, on a year-round basis, feed deer, attract deer, and try to control and grow a deer herd, you need a food plot program. Just planting a little quarter-acre food plot or something, or eighth-acre food plot with the candy crop of brassicas isn't a food plot program. Now, back in the day, I don't know when this started, 20 years ago, it was always, whatever size your property is, you need 5 to 10% of your property in food plots. Well, it's probably a good starting point. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. How many deer you have around the area? Are you in big wood settings, your ag areas, and things like that? So there's a lot that goes into that. But a food plot program is something that feeds deer year round. How do you do that? Okay, when you're trying to control and develop and grow a deer herd, you need that program to work for you 365 days a year. Now, for the majority of us in the East, Midwest, North parts of the country, this is going to apply to. If you go down south, it's obviously going to be a little bit different. And for the majority of us, this is what we need to do. This is for private landowners, leaseholders that can plant food plots, whatever it is. If you're supplemental feeding, that's something completely different, and that'll be a different video later on. A food plot program, though, what we need to do is you need to plant for something that's going to last 365. When you guys plant the candy crop of brassicas, because that's what everybody wants to plant is brassicas, because it's the ice cream to deer, right? Well, when you plant those brassicas in the fall, okay, the problem is those brassicas get wiped out. You're left with some, brassica bulbs. They either don't get eaten, or they get absolutely destroyed. So in the peaks of the winter, when food is most critical, you have zero food feeding the wildlife. So therefore, you're not controlling movement, you're not building a deer herd, and you're not helping to give deer the essential minerals, nutrients, protein, whatever it is, to the deer herd to essentially grow deer. So we need to plant something that's going to last. And this is the most important, is we need to focus more on grains, cereal grains, such as winter wheat and winter rye. Reason being is winter wheat and winter rye fills the void, fills that gap throughout the months where times are most critical before spring green up. And that's going to be January, February, and most of March. Winter wheat and winter rye fills that gap. It feeds the deer for an additional 2 to 3 months before spring green up. And when you have spring green up that takes over, okay, you have all that lush, green, tender food. And again, depending on what part of the country you're in, if you're in big wood setting, you're going to have less of it. If you're in ag areas where you have open sunlight and hedgerows and small patches of woods, you're going to have more of it. But the way that it works is spring green up, you have a high abundance of food throughout the spring and summer months into the fall. When you start getting to the fall, it starts to decline. Now, obviously, habitat management goes into this, where you have enough, natural browse and woody browse to help, feed the deer, because natural browse is the backbone to all healthy deer herds. Always remember that. Natural browse is the backbone to all healthy deer herds. Without natural browse, you have nothing. But we can supplement them through a food plot program. So when you plant this winter wheat, winter rye throughout the winter, it goes into the winter months. Okay, it's going to go dormant a little bit, but you get sunny days. It perks right back up within a day or two. It's going to perk right up. It's going to feed the deer, and then when the temperatures start getting, you start getting into end of February, March, mid-March, end of March, that winter wheat and rye really takes off. It perks right up, and deer will absolutely hammer it. It's high protein, pretty nutritious to the wildlife, depending on your soil conditions. but that is going to allow that program to feed deer for many months, start leading into spring green up when you start getting that peak of spring green up, lush, tender, natural browse, right? And then you need something after that to take over. So what usually do we plant? Well, we either start getting into some soybeans if you have large enough areas, but you can get into some clover. Clover is pretty much a year-round food source for 9-10 months out of the year, depending where you're at, 8 months. But it's really a go-to for clover. So you start, once that rye and wheat start to die off, it just becomes unpalatable. You start getting into some clovers that you plant, right? That takes you through the spring and summer months for an additional food plot, supplement into your program. You get into that peak of summer, clover, depending on what state you're in, may go, dormant, it might be too hot or something, but for the majority of cases, it's a great crop to plant. And it's very high in protein, nutritious, lots of micronutrients in it, high in protein. That'll take you through the summer. And then we start getting into our fall when food starts to decline. We have another food source, which we can plant brassicas, right? Because everybody wants to plant brassicas. But in that brassicas, we need to mix in the grains, okay? You can either do it at planting or come back in, after the brassica grows up. If you have some bare spots or the deer wiped you out, we can fill it in with winter wheat or winter rye. I just prefer the wheat because it seems to be more attractive to the wildlife, more palatable to them, but rye will work just as fine, just as good. And you fill that gap in there, fill the gaps of the brassicas, or if they wiped you out, that's going to take you all the way through November into December, even parts of January. That is a food plot program to continuously feed the wildlife, feed the deer herd, attract turkeys, attract deer, and keep them from leaving your property, going to other properties to get shot. Obviously, I say this in every video, it's a wild deer, it's going to do what it does. We're not holding them for 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It's just not going to happen no matter what you do. The deer are going to leave your property. But if we can control that movement and help hold them on our property for longer periods of time, it's less likely for them to get shot. So a program, if you start going down south, a good program for the fall food plot may be even beans or buckwheat and mixed in with some clovers, because down there you may not get frost and it may not kill off that clover, so that'll feed them all year long, all throughout the winter months. Have a program, guys. Consider how many deer you have on your property, how much area you have, and what makes sense. If you have a smaller food plot, again, the grains are going to work great. If you have a larger food plot, brassicas with grains may be a good idea. Further down south, clovers, legumes may work great. Even buckwheat and soybeans may make sense if you have a large enough property. And if you have in the Midwest and eastern parts here, soybeans may be a great option as well, because you have the pods standing. If you have a large enough area, you can even mix in winter wheat and brassicas into those grains. So there's lots of things you could do, but a program is something that feeds deer 365 days a year. A program is not something that we just plant for the fall, some brassicas, because we want to plant the ice cream crop, and then you have food for a month and a half, 2 months, and then all of a sudden you say we fed the deer, and we're working on a management program for our property. No, that's not a food plot program. You have to be able to feed that wildlife 365 days a year. Hope that makes sense. Any questions, leave a comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you guys are new. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you want more information on food plots, soil samples, and habitat management, click this video right here on the screen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you guys are new.